Hello everyone, my name is CIS300. Today I would like to cover the topic processing hardware and other hardware. Have you ever looked inside a computer case? The small parts may actually look complicated, but the inside of a computer case isn't actually really that mysterious. Let us see how we can understand the basic terminology and understand a bit more about what goes inside a computer. So as you can see, the different big parts of the computer is shown here. This is a big picture. So we have inside a computer a motherboard, processor, RAM, optical drive, hard drive, heatsink, floppy, system fan, power supply. Let us see one by one. The motherboard. It is the circuit board that holds the main internal components of the computer together. On the motherboard, there are three main cards. These are the sound card that operates on the sound, the video card that handles the graphics, and you can see on the monitor and the modem card which allows the computer to communicate with each other. Also on the motherboard is a central processing unit called the CPU. It is the processor or the brain of a computer. Let us see how that looks like. The CPU is also called a processor. It is located inside the computer case and it is, as already told, it is on the motherboard. It is sometimes called the brain of the computer and its job is to carry out commands. Whether you press a key, click, or whether you press a key or click the mouse or start application, whatever it is, whenever you're sending instruction to the CPU, that's what it performs. The CPU is actually about a 2-inch ceramic square with a silicon chip located inside. The chip is usually about the size of a thumbnail. The CPU fits into the motherboard's CPU socket, which is covered by the heatsink and an object that absorbs heat from the computer. A processor's speed is measured in megahertz. We will be seeing how and what it is. The random access memory, which also is called as RAM, read-only memory is called as ROM. This memory, the random access memory, holds the information you're working with while the computer is turned on. Once you turn the computer off, all the information that is in the RAM will be gone. ROM, that stands for read-only memory. This memory holds the information that you can only read but not erase. The information in ROM is built in and is always there when your computer is turned off. Let us see further. The power supply. It converts the electricity into current that works into the computer. When the current is turned on, the power supply allows the converted electricity to travel into the computer components inside the computer. And then we've got a hard drive. It is where your software documents and the other files are stored. The hard drive is a long-term storage, which means all the data is saved even if you turn off the computer or if you unplug it. When you run a program or open a file, the computer copies some of the data from the hard drive into the RAM. Do you still remember the full form of RAM? It's random access memory. When you save the file, the data is copied back to the hard drive. The faster the hard drive, the faster your computer can start up and load programs. So this is a textual description of what we have discussed so far. So a power supply and a cooling fan are some of the components. The motherboard, which we have seen, and this is the cross section or the inside view of a CPU or a computer. So the CPU goes here. This is the motherboard. These are some of the expansion slots. This is the motherboard. And this is the memory slot, the drives, and finally the fan. There are some of the ports which connects or connectors are exposed through the exterior of the system case. So here you can see some of the empty slots, and this is the USB port. So what is the full form of a USB? I want to find out that. We have seen what is a processor. The CPU is also called a microprocessor. It performs two basic stuff, that is the arithmetic or logic unit, and there is a control unit. So what it does is listed here. So we have seen a CPU, how it looks like. There are two major manufacturers, that is Intel and AMD. And there are again two types of CPUs. There can be multiple types, and they are called as multi-core. That is more than one core. It can be dual core, quad core, octo-core, or whatever. For today's assignment, I would like you to go through what kind of processor is there in your system. Is it a laptop or a computer? And inside of a laptop or a computer, what kind of processor is there? So we have already seen that the CPU's processing speed is measured in gigahertz or megahertz. This is actually a clock speed. The higher the clock speed, the faster your computer can perform. Clock speed. So 3 gigahertz of clock speed is faster, or 3 megahertz of clock speed. I want you to find out that. Moving on. So there is something called as GPU, which stands for Graphics Processing Unit. What is it and what it does is listed here. And this is an example of a 3D ride at Universal Studio. So we have seen two different types of memory, the random access memory, and here we can see a bigger picture of a computer memory where it is mainly divided into internal and external. Then under internal memory, there are 5 different types. That is random access memory, cache memory, sequential access, virtual, and read-only memory. Inside random access memory, there are again 2 types, SRAM and DRAM. What is the full form of SRAM and DRAM? Find out. And coming to the external, there are 3 different types, solid state, magnetic, and optical. And some of the examples or some of the types of it are listed here. So a cache memory is used to speed up the processing speed by storing the data that may be needed in the next CPU in the handy locations. It is usually built inside the CPU. And there is something called as registers, which temporarily store the data and intermediate results during the processing. As we have already seen, ROM stands for read-only memory. And nothing can be written over it. And there is something called as flash memory. These are non-volatile chips in which the data can be stored and retrieved. So, we come to end of the chapter. Let us have a quick quiz. Which type of memory is erased when the power goes off? What is it? Is it ROM? Is it RAM? Or is it flash memory? True or false? The CPU can also be called as the motherboard. Is it true or is it false? A CPU with 4 cores is called a dash CPU. What goes into the blank? I hope you're ready with the answers. Let us check. So the first one, the type of memory which is erased when the power goes out is RAM. The CPU can also be called as a motherboard. That is definitely false. CPU is called the brain of the computer. A CPU with 4 cores is called a quad-core CPU. I hope by now we have the basic terminology covered. We have seen the motherboard, we have seen the processor, RAM modules, the hard drive, the power supply, etc. That's all from my side. Thank you.